I'm Dr. Jeffrey Boyd. This video is about how to win the Keeling Curve War. The Keeling Curve is something which I'll describe in a minute. It goes like this. Winning the war will mean bending the Keeling Curve so that it goes like that. There are two main issues in the United States. First, do we want to win the war? It's going to be really, really hard to bend the Keeling Curve so that it goes like that. And second, are we willing to actually stop extracting all fossil fuels from the ground by the year 2050? But before we discuss those fun issues, let me remind you what I mean by winning the Keeling Curve war. The temperature on Earth is mostly defined by how many carbon dioxide equivalents there are up in the atmosphere, which is measured by the Keeling Curve, which is based on air samples taken on a mountain in Hawaii. Here are three possible futures of the Keeling Curve. Future 1 is where we are heading today. Future 3 is what might happen if we limited carbon emissions to net zero by the year 2050. Future 2 is an intermediate course. Here are the corresponding temperatures. Future 1 if we do nothing, 2 intermediate, 3 net zero by the year 2050. Scientists tell us that future 3 will be hot, 2 will be hotter, and 1 will be scorching. When I speak of winning the Keeling Curve war, I mean that carbon dioxide levels will eventually stop rising and our grandchildren will not have to face future number 1. I have two ideas about winning the Keeling Curve war. The first is that we have to really want to win it. It's going to be very hard to cause the Keeling Curve to bend like that. It's going to take all of our effort for the rest of our lives. Do we really want to do it? Consider, for example, the American people after Pearl Harbor. They were willing to make any sacrifices. They were willing to have their sons sent abroad to be killed. They were willing to have their automobile factories turned into airplane production factories. It was illegal in 1942 to own a new automobile. In the year 2023, when this video is made, I don't see that level of determination and consensus among the American people. The Republicans are against it, and the Democrats have not had the courage to tell the American people how hard this is going to be, and the youth climate movement has not put forward any specific plans. So my first point is that in order to win the war, we have to want to win it, and I don't think we do. You may think this video is about the two big issues, but in fact, it's about a million tiny decisions. The book Kochland by Christopher Leonard on page 481 tells how the fossil fuel industry in the persons of the Koch brothers converted the Kansas state legislature from being pro-green to pro-fossil fuel. The Koch brothers invested $146 billion in 90 different organizations of think tanks and lobby groups that have been called the climate denial machine. The second idea I have is that we must stop extracting all fossil fuels from the ground by the year 2050 in order to get to net zero by 2050. The Permian Basin currently produces more oil and gas than any other field on Earth. In my view, the Permian Basin needs to reduce production of oil and gas by more than 4% per year to reach the goal of net zero by 2050. Now, what gives us the authority to seize control of privately owned assets of oil and gas and coal in the ground? Well, we are involved in a war for our own survival, and therefore the War Powers Act gives us unlimited authority. Our goal is to keep fossil fuels in the ground in accordance with the agreement of net zero by 2050. But if we stop extracting all fossil fuels by 2050, how will Americans heat their houses, drive their cars, move billions of tons worth of material in the supply chain We're not prepared to live without fossil fuels, and this is because we have been wasting our times as if this is just business as usual, as if we're not faced with the worst crisis that humans have ever faced. It's time to wake up. People are already suffering and dying. Millions of plants and animals are already extinct. Glaciers are melting. The Colorado River is drying up. Thousands of climate migrants are seeking to enter the United States, and in the U.S., we're having the worst storms, tornadoes, floods, fires, and droughts that we have ever seen, and this is only the beginning of the crisis. My opinion is that we should do both of these things. We should do whatever is necessary to win this war, no matter how hard it is, and we should stop pumping all oil and gas by the year 2050. Failure to do so will result in worse suffering. Now, if you pay attention to the climate movement, you will find a lot of young people with abundant energy, as I used to have 6 decades ago, before I needed a nap in the afternoons. The question in our next video is, how can someone who is retired contribute to the climate movement? Thank you very much for your attention. On August 23, 2019, David Koch went to meet his maker. I suspect the meeting did not go well for David.